Best thing about Ventnor?
Lovely hills.
It's probably the microclimate.
It's botanical gardens.
Crab pastas.
Yeah, you can't beat it. Yeah, for hills.
Should there be a tunnel to the mainland?
Oh, that's controversial.
I think yes.
Absolutely no.
Yes.
Absolutely not. No tunnel to the mainland.
Well, because I'm under 30, I think there should be a tunnel.
The whole point of the Isle of Wight is that it's an island.
I don't think we should be isolated.
What's the worst thing about Ventnor?
You genuinely can get mobile signal from France and be charged extra.
In the summer it smells a little bit.
It's the finest town in the country, if not the world.
There's nowhere else quite like it.
Mark Steele's in town.
Thanks so much, and welcome to Mark Steele's in Town, which comes this week from Ventnor on the Isle of Wight, an area, a splendid area known for its modern outlook and its youthful population. A place racing along at such a pace, it's already got to 1954. And one of the clever things that you've done here in Ventnor is attracted lots and lots of old people, but to a place where everywhere is a 1 and 3 gradient, so the poor sods can't walk up and leave. One of your main boasts here on all the tourist brochures is that you've got the biggest concentration of Jurassic fossils in the world here, from dinosaurs that lived 65 million years ago, although the fossils here are from dinosaurs that lived 65 million and 60 years ago, as they were a bit behind the rest. And what I love about Ventnor is it's not enough that the Isle of Wight is cut off from the rest of Britain. Ventnor likes to be cut off from the rest of the Isle of Wight. It's an island within an island, and I was delighted that someone who showed me round as his opening line said, first things first, Ventnor is the capital of the world, Sandown is a despicable hovel. Just a couple of statistics here. In the EU referendum, there was a 62% vote to leave, although, to be fair, that doesn't make the island anti-Europe, as most of those thought they were voting to leave Britain. Except here in Ventnor, where you thought you were voting to leave the Isle of Wight. And this must be the sort of attitude that makes it so attractive to young people growing up here, who love it so much that some of them stay here for much of their lives, right up until the age where they can physically walk up the hill and get a bus to the hovercraft. But there is a reason that people love it here, which is summed up in the town motto, we've got a microclimate, you know. The tourist brochure starts, Ventnor is famed for its microclimate, making it an ideal spot with the ideal climate for the ideal holiday. And this is the first thing that any of you say about the place, usually with some bogus science to make it sound right. Oh, we've got a microclimate here because of the southeast facing cliffs, so cold can't get round the corners, and the angle of our leaves attracts heat bouncing off the English Channel, so we can grow pineapples on our roofs. And if you fall asleep in the garden, a cactus forms on your head. And they've done experiments with camels where they can't stand the heat on the undercliff because it's hotter than the Sahara. And Saudi Arabian women like it here because their princes let them wear bikinis because they say even we wouldn't let them wear a burqa in this heat. Is it can be gorgeously boiling here, and at the same time everyone's freezing to death in Sandown. If you think I'm exaggerating, the book Ventnor, Isle of Wight, tells us the meadows and streams of Ventnor give way to something much more exotic. The undercliff's vegetation has elements of the Amazon jungle about it. Now, it can be sunny at times, but the Amazon jungle? How deluded are you? At least in Sandown, you're only likely to get mugged at a cash point. Here you'll get captured by a lost tribe firing blowpipes. The book Victorians in Search of Winter Health tells us observers regarded Ventnor as bearing comparison to the island of Madeira. The Portuguese island of Madeira, south of Tangiers. There are a lot of steep hills in Madeira, which makes it much like Ventnor. Also, many of us in Madeira, we like to say that Sandown is a despicable hovel. Now, at this point, I'd like to make a defence of Sandown, because if anyone says it's dull in any way, there was a front-page headline in the Isle of Wight Courier that illustrates the level of excitement, not just in Sandown, but across the island. Burnt lasagna fills room with smoke. I simply cannot understand why this wasn't picked up by the international news agencies. It went on. A lasagna left cooking in an oven at Clancy's Coffee House in Sandown has been removed from the building. Phew. The road remains open, as does the high street. But you have a naturally exciting town because you're blessed with a thrilling level of subsidence. What you lack in entertainment that can keep the young people from leaving, you more than make up for with the thrill of having no idea when you come home with your kitchen's fallen 300 yards down a cliff. According to Wikipedia, a significant area is built on clay. The ground is notoriously unstable and many buildings and amenities have been lost to subsidence. There is a local expression, we live near the sea and are getting nearer every day. Must be brilliant. Like when a guest says, can you tell me where the toilet is? You have to say, not with any certainty, no. It might be on the stairs up on the left, or it might be halfway to Guernsey. Who knows? Sometimes the Isle of Wight does make the national news, like the parents who took their son out of school because a boy in his class was wearing a dress and they said that made him confused. But of course he was confused, not because of the dress. He lives on the Isle of Wight. The poor thing gets told he's living in a place that's like being next to Africa. There are dinosaur fossils, a burnt lasagnas, front page news. The boy in a dress is the least confusing thing he sees all day. There's so much excitement here. Apparently, even though it's 60 miles away and therefore impossible to see because of the curvature of the Earth, lots of you reckon that from Ventnor you can see France. And not only that, several people have told me this. You see it upside down. A columnist in the Isle of Wight Courier wrote, what causes people to think they can see France from Ventnor is a freak of nature known as a superior mirage. A coastguard once told me he was on Ventnor golf course and was able to describe in details the coast of Cherbourg, including the vehicles along the seafront. It may sound mad, but it's true. It is honestly, Ventnor. From here you can see all the other countries upside down. Is William with us? William's the first. Can we go to William? Because William, who runs a shop, don't you, down in the main road there. So try and explain to the good people, and mostly to me, how you managed to see France even though you can't.
My friend Watering Can Pete reckoned he could see it one day. I thought this was impossible. However, while sat on the balcony, it had been a balmy, balmy day, and over France, in the stratosphere, the air was very cool, with water crystals and vapours forming. When this happens, what's below can be mirrored in what's above. And therefore, though geographically impossible, Nipper, we saw it.
William, that's magnificent. Not only is that going to go out on this programme, it'll also be repeated in Book of the Week as a poem. The book Ventnor, Town of 1,000 Steps, explains a different way of seeing France a little bit more scientifically. It says, the hill above the town is so high that as you stand on the top, you can imagine seeing France. It's a living science lesson here. The first thing you read on the local website is the Isle of Wight was formed at the end of the last ice age, about 8,000 to 9,000 years ago. Although, strictly speaking, Ventnor didn't actually have an ice age, just a slightly cooler age. The sort of slush age. When you had to put a jumper on in the evening. Now, one reason why Ventnor can seem apart from the rest of the island is you're not all that easy to get to. Do people come on the ferry or the hovercraft if you ever go? A little bit of a split. Most of us, 4 hovercraft, 2 ferry. The rest of you never, ever go that far. I love the hovercraft. It's so majestically tatty. It's like a bus. Just like an old bus. It just buzzes off the wall, vroom, onto the concrete. You hop on and it goes off again within seconds. And then it zips past everything to ride, and then you get straight off again. And then you're ready to enjoy the most luxurious railway network in the world. A beautiful, vast system of interconnected lines hurtling through the countryside at speeds that can reach up to 3 miles an hour. Wonderfully crafted seats that are so well designed they even managed to bounce up and down when the train stood still. I love that train. It was bought off London Underground, but it's not a recent tube train, it's one from the 1930s, making it a full 20 years out of date even for the Isle of Wight. And it rattles so much that if you're just looking down and reading, you think you must be whipping through the island and liable to take off, while people in Cherbourg go, "My God, there appears to be an upside-down flying underground train." But then you look up and you're barely moving while it's going clang, and if you find a newspaper on the seat, you expect it to tell you the king's abdicated. It's brilliant. But even that train doesn't get you to Ventnor because there used to be 2 stations here, but the whole line was shut down in the 60s. So now the train only goes as far as Shanklin, which means Sandown has a station, but Ventnor doesn't. It's a good job that there's no sense of rivalry between any of you in any way. Well, that might be a source of some friction. So to get to Ventnor, you then need to get a bus. But luckily, the bus goes 2 or 3 times a week and travels along roads that are so wide, some places they're nearly as wide as the bus. But it's even more complicated than that, because most of these little roads let you get 9/10 of the way to your destination before thrilling you with a sign that says road closed. Which means the journey from Newport to Ventnor is slightly more complicated than travelling across occupied France in 1941. Which, by coincidence, from the top of the hill on a clear day, you can imagine. But now, of course, the debate is whether you want to remain an island, because there's an argument about whether you should build a tunnel or a bridge. So, what do we think here? Are we... tunnel? Some tunnel, some bridge. Who wants neither?
Build a wall instead.
Build a wall. When Trump gets exiled, this is where he's coming. And who's going to pay for the wall? Sandown's going to pay for the wall. But this issue seems to divide the island. There was a debate in the newspaper with a poll that showed 60% in favour of a tunnel, and a comment section full of thoughtful debates such as this, right? Honestly. This was a real comment. So build a tunnel, and then anyone can pop over when they like to our nice, quiet little place to have a few break-ins and get home before anybody knows they've been burgled. This is a wonderful argument. And then he goes, what have you got to nick? Here, there's nothing worth nicking. It's 1954. They get home. What did you get? I got some corned beef and a mangle. According to a book I've got called A History of the Isle of Wight, at the turn of the 19th century, the island had 10 pleasure piers. So if you'd built them all in a line, you'd have had your bridge. You can't blame people for thinking the Isle of Wight's not in Britain. You've got a garlic farm up the road. Do you all know the garlic farm? Yes. It's obsessed with garlic there, as I suppose it would. But it's brilliant. Everything they've got is just packed full of garlic. There's garlic ice cream, garlic beer. You could probably get garlic bananas, garlic Ventolin inhalers. 3-piece sweets made out of garlic, garlic dominatrixes that beat you on the arse with bulbs of garlic. There's a garlic recipe book there, and Ventnor gets a special mention with a recipe for Ventnor rock salmon that goes, marinate fish in lemon and cumin seeds, add 650 cloves of garlic, place in pan and leave outside in microclimate for 40 minutes. The most important role for the garlic farm could be its medicinal role, because the book claims that garlic is more effective than antibiotics, cures colds, prevents Alzheimer's, and its most well-known benefit is to fight off cancer with no side effects. I expected to go, if our farm had been around 65 million years ago, the Isle of Wight's dinosaurs would still be with us. But there's a consistency to you here, Ventnor, because you've been brilliant at selling yourself as a tourist resort. There was only a few dozen people here in the 1800s. It had just been a tiny village, and it was most famous because there was an attempted invasion here, an incident mentioned by the historian Dan Snow, you get on the telly, who said, I quote, "One of many forgotten invasions of Britain took place in 1545 when the French landed in Ventnor, but fled when they saw the locals." And Ventnor became one of the first beaches to operate bathing machines in which ladies could climb inside a sort of box thing which was wheeled into the water so they could take off some of their clothes and nobody see anything bare, which is a marvellous attitude. Even ISIS only insists women should cover themselves with a bit of cloth, not a whole box. And, one day, it is recorded, a woman's bare ankle did slide outside the box and a couple from Freshwater had their kids removed from the beach as it made them come through. Now, at this point, I'd like to introduce Jodie. Is Jodie about? Because, Jodie, you're from a family that goes back a great deal of time.
I am, yes.
In Ventnor, and particularly on the beach. Is that right?
I am. Our family's from the beach since 1830. So
right, and so there are a number of families that have been...
There was the Blakes and there's the Spencers. There's only the Blakes that are there now.
Right, so did you see them off a bit like the Corleones?
Yeah. Best ones won, you know.
And was it sort of smuggling? Smuggling was the big thing.
We were Irish smugglers. We were Irish pirates, and we came over and we got shipwrecked on the Isle of Wight, and that's why we're here.
Oh, that's cool. We were Irish pirates and smugglers.
We were heading for France, but we got all upside down. So.
So this was at the time that Jodie's family and the Blakes were starting to build it up as a resort. Then this was when Ventnor became the Ventnor that we know, and it became famous and known as cultured, and the whole town designed to look classical. For example, I asked on Twitter if anyone had any experiences of Ventnor, and someone called Spodcast replied, "The public Kazi by Boots has lovely Art Deco floor and wall tiles." As I discovered when my son had an emergency poo there earlier this year. So how can anyone say there's nothing for kids to do round here? Look at this article on a British Telecom website called The 6 Wonders of the Isle of Wight. It mentions Carrisbrook Castle and the amount of garlic grown here, which is all interesting. I'm not sure it qualifies as wonders, but, you know... For one of the wonders of the Isle of Wight, it says, escalators are scarce. Up until recently, the Isle of Wight had just one escalator. Simon Haytack on Twitter wrote, "When BHS came to the Isle of Wight, we at last had our first escalator. People went up and down it all day." It must be fantastic being here. There are loads of real wonders here. You've got a paddling pool shaped like the Isle of Wight, where you can hear parents shouting, "Don't stand on the Ventnor bit, it's got a microclimate, you'll burn your feet." It's hard to see why the young should feel they're not a priority here, especially when you get attitudes such as the one expressed in this letter to the Isle of Wight County Press. "I recently had the idea that if you were born on the island, you shouldn't be allowed to leave until you're 10. We took our 9-year-old grandson for his first trip off the island to attend the flower show, and he was miserable. His mother believes it's because we took him to a gardening event, but I'm sure it's because he disliked the mainland." So, now, I'd love to introduce Emily from the County Press. So, what other ones do you get in? You must love it when the letters come in.
Yeah, we had a really good one recently about a guy who was scared of extra strong hand dryers.
Quite frightening. Now, what was his reasoning?
Well, he had this amazing phrase. He said, "The air left imposing ripples in the flesh of his hands." And it really stuck with me. Every time I dry my hands, I can't help but think of it. I just think of Derek from Binstead. The best bit was that he sort of blamed the EU.
Yeah. What was the one about someone's MOT?
Oh, yeah, that was my MOT.
Oh!
My car failed its MOT because there was a red squirrel living in the bonnet. It's fine. fine.
That's so brilliant, the Isle of Wight.
Yeah, they put it on the MOT failure certificate as well, so just so I have a permanent record.
Thanks very much for that, Ellie. That's brilliant. Thank you. It does feel everything in Ventnor has to be separate from the rest of the island and the rest of the country. Even your squirrels have to be different, living in cars. And Ventnor is all about red squirrels, not your normal, miserable grey ones the rest of Britain makes do with. In fact, there is a law. It is illegal to bring a grey squirrel into red squirrel territory. The penalty is 2 years imprisonment or a £5,000 fine. So there'll be someone in a cell, probably in Parkhurst Prison up the road, where the Crays went, "What are you in for, Smudge?" Smuggled a grey squirrel on the hovercraft. They could just be grey squirrels that have got sunburnt in your microclimate. And you've got, on the site of the now demolished Chest Hospital, your famous botanic gardens. Now, usually a botanic garden is full of hothouses, so you can see tropical plants. But here, the garden's website tells us many of our plants are native to the Andes Mountains of South America, but can be grown outside at the Ventnor Gardens due to our... And it's so tropical here, even the chief gardener, which you may have noticed at the Botanic Gardens, wears a Rastafarian hat, although he's white, because it's so humid here, dreadlocks grow naturally in this climate. Do you know the bloke? Yeah. Ollie? Surely it's Ollie. There is a hothouse in the gardens to cool things down a bit. And in the hothouse, they've got some giant Amazonian water lilies. And I thought, yeah, all right, I suppose. And then, as you leave, there's a short film that you see. The short film says, "These water lilies are unique in that they self-pollinate and change gender." So I hope that couple doesn't go there with their kid. You don't do things or think things the way normal places do, but you don't. For example, I'd like to introduce Kim. Kim, who I met a little while ago, is a true celebrity across the island because it was Kim who had the grace to entertain everyone by burning a lasagna that filled a room with... Kim, can you just run us through that momentous day? Was it terrifying?
Yeah, no, it wasn't a fire.
No.
Just a bit of smoke.
Yeah, yeah.
It was in the oven for 3 hours, though.
But you weren't in at the time?
No, I went to the cinema.
Thank you very much, Kim. You don't think normally here, Ventnor. That's a good thing. I'll say that as a positive thing. The proof is the theme park known as Blackgang Chine. This is advertised as a land of imagination, and there are some brilliant features, like the crooked house that I went round. And the only thing is, because this is Ventnor, it was a normal house when it was built. It just subsided, and now, in fact, I bet half of you could charge people to come and look round your house. It's a crooked house, and people would be going, "Oh, it's ever so funny, halfway through the kitchen there's a 6-foot drop and you land in the sink." But then Blackgang Chine gets really weird, doesn't it? There are giant flying tadpoles in the trees. There's a talking bin that goes, "Come and give me rubbish." There's a massive moving purple fish in the bushes. There's a slow-motion dinosaur that burps. It's not a theme park, it's the visions of a junkie. And it's on a cliff. So over the years, some of the attractions have had to be brought away from the cliff edge because of landslips. They should have left them there. It would be the most authentic log flume in the world. One part that was moved back was Underwater World, which is so Ventnor. To go to great lengths to stop your underwater world from ending up underwater. Now, we're very lucky tonight because Michelle's here. Michelle very kindly showed us around Blackgang Chine. Do any of the kids come out terrified?
I think they're quite surprised as they come through, but they all love it.
just love it because it's scary.
We are the land of imagination.
A brilliant imagination. You can imagine France. How stoned are the designers?
We do have some interesting creative discussions. Yeah.
Right. Now, here's one ride. I don't know about these things, but it just occurs to me there is one ride I think would be very, very popular. It's a sort of moving staircase that slowly goes up. So you don't need a tunnel or a bridge. That's my conclusion here. I don't think you need one. You're meant to be an island. There's an Isle of Wight space programme with a rocket testing station. The first ever radio was developed here by Marconi at the Needles. Maybe you're conning us all by pretending to be 60 years in the past. The Isle of Wight is racing into the future. Even your tropical climate shows you're a few years ahead of us when it comes to global warming. It is beautiful and enigmatic here, and I love that it feels like you've had to make a lot of effort to get here, crossing the sea, then getting on medieval trains, winding through tiddly lanes, abseiling down Steep Hill Cove, even though you're only about 90 miles from London, which you can see on a clear day. One of the brilliant things about Ventnor is that someone actually said to me these words: "Don't get me started on the sweet corn fair." I have to tell you, in cities, it's quite rare to hear that. I would say if you can manage to get up the hills, you can imagine you can see whatever you want up there, because Ventnor is a magnificent collection of random objects. Palm trees, dinosaurs, wall lizards, 1930s underground trains that don't quite reach to Ventnor, a lonely escalator, garlic ice cream. It wouldn't surprise you here if someone said, "Where you're from, doesn't everyone have a fridge in a tree?" It's just... brilliantly random. So I will leave you, Ventnor, with a poem written by Lord Tennyson, one of many Victorians who loved to visit here. And thank you very, very much for listening. I'll leave you with this. A beautiful poem. At the risk of sounding mushy, I think this sums up Ventnor, as Lord Tennyson said himself. "An isle within an isle, that's Ventnor. No morbid soul could put a dent in her, with warmth to nurture palm tree or koala. Muster strength to climb the hill, gaze out to sea, and then you will see upside down as far as Guatemala. where homes that slide down hills are celebrated. For Sandown may be nearer, but it's closer to Madeira. But in all this heat, my pen's evaporated." Thank you very much.
Mark Steele's In Time was written and performed by Mark Steele, with additional material by Pete Sinclair. It was produced in Ventnor by Carl Cooper. It was a BBC Studios production.